Now let's get into spiritual con men. This is really the meat and bones of this video. Now, the problem with spiritual con men is, in general, they may have some real wisdom. Now, there are some con men out there that are just like full of BS. I mean, they do not believe what they're selling. It is literally a mask. And there are people like that. But the real dangerous ones are a mixture of clown, cowboy, and con men. And what makes the ones particularly dangerous is they do have some knowledge. You know, they may have practiced meditation for a number of years. They may be able to invoke an altered state in you. And what makes them dangerous is they're not totally full of shit. There is some aspect of what they're teaching that has realness to it. And that's where the danger comes in, because they may have real abilities, they may have real insights, they may have some experience of non-dual states, they may really have something here of value and a knowledge that has something to it that can draw you in, where they're able to speak with some authority on this particular subject that they're gifted in. But the problem is what we're looking at isn't the quality of the content or the quality of the knowledge. We're looking at the character of the person. We're looking at how do they behave. In the words of Jesus, by their deeds you shall know them, not by the words that come forth from the mouth. And that is really the maxim that we should be assessing and looking at spiritual leaders or spiritual guides or spiritual masters, is how do they end up behaving? What do they like to be around? How do they conduct themselves? How do they engage themselves in their relationships with money, people, and their environment? And to some degree, you have to have some level of close proximity to these people to know that aspect. But that's what we're looking at, because you can have knowledge, but it doesn't stop you being an arsehole. It doesn't stop you being a manipulator. It doesn't stop you being greedy. It doesn't stop you being a sexual predator. And there's a website by B. Schofield that looks at gurus and spiritual abusers and spiritual abuse. And she's done a lot of sort of profiles on various people that abuse various group members. And what's interesting about her work as a sort of investigative journalist is it cuts across all spiritual traditions. It can be pretty much across the board. But when you read about all the profiles of these spiritual abusers and gurus, it's like a playbook. They all kind of work from the same hymn sheet and they practice the same process. So that's the bit you're looking at when it comes to spotting a spiritual con man, is what do they do? And also be aware that what makes us susceptible to spiritual abuse, what makes us susceptible to being conned. And if you look at any get-rich-quick scheme, if you're a con man looking to cheat people out of money, there's a few things you need in your mark. You need some level of naivety or gullibility. You need possibly some kind of financial desperation. That person's in a very bad state. You need a little bit of laziness, that I like the idea of quick money, and you need maybe a little bit of greed, like, ooh, wouldn't I love to have that amount of money that easily? And if they have those qualities, there's the space to kind of con them, to cheat them out of money. But if you don't have those qualities, then that con man is going to leave you alone. They'll get a sense of it isn't worth bothering with this person. And that's the bit here that we have to be aware of, that I can look back and think, well, at the end of the day, it's easy to kind of blame my father, and not that he's guilt-free by any means, but from a kind of my own understanding and growth point of view, that the best protection against spiritual abuse is being aware of what is it in me that is drawn to these people. What is it in me that they can see to exploit? And if I've healed that, dealt with that, absolved myself or transcended that, then I don't have to worry about being exploited. I don't have to worry about being conned. And so as I go through some of these things to watch out for, red flags when it comes to spiritual abuse or spiritual con man, be aware of all these things that are contingent on the person being receptive to that, needing that. Because at the end of the day, spiritual abuse occurs in an exchange. I will give you this, but I will take that. And that you have to be wanting something, you have to be needing something that they're offering to be abused in the first place. And it's hard to be conscious of that, because none of us at the time think that's what's going on. And often it is in retrospect, we look back and think, I should have seen it. And there's the shame kicks in. How did I do that? How did I allow myself to be exploited and abused in such a blatant manner and not even see it? And it's because there is something there to exploit. There's something there to kind of tap into. So as I go through these red flags, be aware that they only can work if you have that in you. So just keep that in mind as we go through them. So let's look at some of the basic red flags that if you're involved in a spiritual group, you have a spiritual teacher, or you're getting involved in a spiritual teacher, you're already with a spiritual teacher, and you start seeing some of these things, just beware. Watch out. Okay? So the first one is this. They make you feel special. And this is a big one. This is the hook on one level. That if you've grown up in an environment where you felt worthless, or you felt abused or neglected, you felt like you're nobody and you're nothing, and someone comes along in a position of authority, who's liked and loved by people, that has this spiritual wisdom, and they make a beeline to you, and they have this feeling that there's something special about you. There is something about you that's important. There's something about you that's different to everyone else. That's a big thing. It's like, I've been looking for that all my life. And at some point, my dad gave me that. He told me that I was special, that working with him was this special thing. We were on this special mission. And by helping him and getting his word out there, I was special. And I bought it, and I wanted to buy it, and I needed to buy it because I felt so neglected and so unloved by him. This was a way of getting his approval and feeling that yeah, I was special and I was important. I wasn't just a kind of a nobody. And what they'll do is exploit that. They'll look for that need in you and they'll exploit it. And what you discover later on is that specialness and having that place of specialness will be contingent on how you serve them. It will be contingent on your utility and value to them in terms of aggrandizing their own ego, their own wealth, whatever, their own status, whatever it may be. So you'll soon discover it's not unconditional specialness. It's very contingent on you ensuring they feel that they want to feel. Not to start off with. To start off, it can feel like I've been picked out of the crowd. There's all these people in this group and they've honed in on me. I'm special. And we want to believe it's because I'm special. But it's really because they sense that need, that desire to feel special. These predators are very good at attuning to who's exploitable, who has that in them. So you are special in the sense that you are different, but not in the way that you want to believe. It's like what they're really tapping into is you're going to be easy to exploit. You're going to be easy to kind of to be taken advantage of, and that's the bit that actually makes you special. Not the kind of special we want, but it's kind of special that they actually need. So that's the first thing. If you have a spiritual teacher that's singling you out, bringing you forward and letting you know that you're a particularly special student and you're really important to them and you have a really important mission and there's something about you that's special, that's a red flag. It's a real big red flag. So be aware of that. In keeping with that same special feeling, this spiritual teacher, a spiritual predator, creates an us versus them mindset. So one of the things that they'll do is create this sense of, here are we, this special group on this special mission, and there are those who are on the inner circle, those who get it, and pretty much the rest of the world who don't get it. And so it creates this sense of artificial division, and that if you're not in the in-group, you're either maliciously against it or you're ignorant. And that was one thing my dad kind of presented, is that we had this kind of superior sense of knowledge, we had this superior wisdom, so you got this inflated sense of importance, and people who weren't aligned with it or part of it were kind of like the dum-dums. They were the kind of the people living the TikTok 9-to-5 life that were kind of lost in the grind of everyday living their life for this, that and the other, and we were somehow special and superior. So you can get this individualized I'm special, but also we're special. And if we're special, then automatically there are people who are unspecial, who are less than special, who are just kind of ordinary. And watch out for that. The moment you feel inflated, the moment you feel like you're part of a little group, however small it is, that's a little bit better than the others, that you're dealing with a spiritual predator. You're dealing with someone that is going to exploit that later on for their own gain. So that's the second red flag, the us versus them mentality. A third red flag is another very common one, which is this guru, this predator, has a special type of wisdom that no one else has. I saw this in that guy's book, Power versus Force, David Dawkins, I think his name was, Hawkins. And I remember seeing an interview with him saying no one else has ever written a book like this. This is the first time this knowledge has ever been communicated this way. And my dad used to say the same thing. My dad wrote a very good book, a very interesting book. And if you were to read it, you would think this guy has a lot of spiritual wisdom. It's only when you get to know him and you deal with him, you realize, well, there's a gap here. So anytime someone expresses this sense of, and again, it's this kind of uniqueness, it's this separation that we're a little bit different, that the knowledge this guru has, or the application of Zen, or the application of mindfulness, or there's something I'm doing that's a little bit different. No one's done this before. So being part of that, you're part of that specialness. But also you can see it's a kind of narcissism. That it's not like, what I'm teaching has been taught for thousands of years. I'm not really teaching anything new. And I'll talk about that later in terms of what a real spiritual teacher expresses. An awareness that this isn't mine. Like whatever I'm teaching has been taught before and there is nothing special or advanced about this knowledge. This is just me sharing it with you, being a conduit for it. But you can learn this from someone else as well. Well, that's not so special. Why not go to someone else? So the spiritual predator will kind of make out like they have something no one else has. They have a wisdom that no one else has. So when you hear that kind of talk, that kind of language, watch out. So the fourth thing to watch out for is equating volunteering and working endlessly as somehow being connected to your commitment to your spirituality. So this is a really big one where what they'll do, and my dad did this, is you work your ass off for me, you make me a lot of money or whatever it is, or you do this free labor and free work, and that equals how committed you are to your spiritual journey. If you have a problem with that, then maybe you're not quite as committed. If you have an issue with that, then maybe you don't really care about your spirituality. So it's a manipulative technique to get free labor, to get resources from you, and to pair that with how committed you are. So surprise, surprise, if you work a lot and give them a lot, you're the best student, you're so committed, you're now extra special. And if you don't do that, well, you're not so committed, you're a little bit attached to the material world, and you're not really the prize student that I'm really looking for, and you can off you go kind of thing. So anytime you're expected to kind of work for this spiritual group for free, and you kind of feel this kind of unspoken or spoken pressure that the more you work, the more committed you are, that's a red flag. Now this is a big one, and it's to do with money. So with this spiritual predator, this spiritual abuser, watch out for this. You will either need to keep giving them money, making them money, or bringing people in who give them and make them money. One of those kind of things where somehow you are doing something through either directly paying them or getting other people in to pay them or working for free to make money, whatever it may be, you are a utility for money. And that overemphasis on money and them getting money and building money, however they rationalize it, however it's justified, and there's a lot of justifications for it, that it ends up being about money and how much money they're making. You see how much money they're making. They're running a seminar of 100 people and it's $5,000 and you do the maths, but it's all for this greater purpose, for this greater good. And if you really care about the message, you're going to bring as many people in. With this money, we can then change the world and we can build new seminar places and we can do this and we can do that. And all this money is going to spreading the message. And meanwhile, they're driving a Mercedes. Meanwhile, they're wearing, have a Louis Vuitton bag or whatever it is. And you start to think, there's a gap here, isn't there? Like, when did it become about that? But they'll rationalize it. They'll justify it. So if you have a spiritual teacher and there's a focus on you giving them money, making them money, or bringing people in that give them or make them money, watch out. This is a greedy person. No ways about it. Now 6, it's a very subtle one, and it's something that my dad put on me and that I kind of fell for on one level, and it's about doubt. So if your spiritual advisor or teacher at some point says to you, look, I know you better than you know yourself, that's a problem. That is a red flag. Anytime anyone tells you that I know you better than you know yourself, what are they really saying? They're really saying your own internal experience of truth and knowing is somehow less than me externally looking at you. I know better than you, that you should doubt yourself and trust what I'm telling you. You should trust really what's going on here, because you may think this is abuse, but you don't really know you the way I know you. I know you so much better than you know yourself. So you need to trust me. You need to let go. You need to surrender and just accept what I'm saying. And that's dangerous. No one knows you better than you know yourself. Your own lived experience, your own awareness of what is going on in you is the ultimate and only authority on your experience. All someone can tell you is their experience of what they think is your experience, but that's it. It's still their experience. So anytime a guru, a teacher, anyone says to you, I know you better than you know yourself, watch out, run. That is a red flag. And number 7 is, and this is one that really kind of bugs me, and I see it out there a lot, is spiritual teachers that justify their own shitty, abusive, and aggressive behavior down to challenging your ego or dismantling your ego or confronting you with your ego. And I'm verbally abusing you, treating you like shit as a way of helping you snap out of whatever you're in. I'm the mad shaman. I'm the kind of the rogue guru that stirs things up and moves things around to kind of cut the truth through. And to me, it's just such utter bullshit that at the end of the day, if you're an arsehole, you're an arsehole. And if you treat people without dignity, care, love, and respect, then that's it, that you're just being an arsehole and you're just rationalizing it through this spiritual manipulative language. And it's not to say that some spiritual teachers can't be direct and maybe there's a little bit abrupt, but there's a big difference between abrupt and being abusive. There's a big difference between being a little bit blunt at some point than being horrible and being demeaning and degrading to people. There's a video here of, I can't even pronounce his name, Besamoti Maduti, abusing a client.
She got triggered by asking me a question. I said, fuck you. Were you the one that asked that question? Were you the one that asked that question? Okay, cool.
So, but what did you get triggered?
Well, fuck you. How do you feel? Fuck you. How do you feel? Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. What's your calling? Fuck you. What's your calling? Fuck you. What's your calling? I don't care. He said, like, no, this is not. See, and here's where this fallacy, let's just address this really clearly, hopefully. This fallacy of self-respect, okay? No offense, especially women, and I understand where it comes from, okay? But you got to get over this if you love yourself. This false sense of self-respect. You're giving away your power, so I'm saying this because I care about you, right? That wasn't clear. Not because I want to fuck you.
It's the intention you're
What's my intention? How do you know my intention? Clearly you don't, because you're fooled by this. If you weren't so high up in your own ass about this fucking concept of respect, you would actually see how much love there is behind me saying what I say.
And his excuse for that is like the excuse all of them have. I'm trying to break this person's ego down. I'm just challenging them. And so if you come up against something that feels like this is abusive, but you're being told your lived experience of that abuse is actually wrong, coming back to that other one, that what you're experiencing isn't really true and you're made to doubt that, then watch out. Like if you feel this is wrong, it's probably wrong. If you feel this is not right, it's probably not right. And this is the thing to be aware of when it comes to spiritual abuse. We are a lot smarter than what we give ourselves credit for. We have instinctual body knowledge about what's wrong, that we should trust a lot more. One of my daughters has told me there's a teacher at a school that just gives her the creeps. She just doesn't like his energy or his vibe. He just has this creepy vibe. And I'm so trust that. Don't overanalyze it. It's her body telling her that. Keep away from him. Keep your distance from him. Like that's based on something real. You know, we should be taught to trust our instinctual feelings to people. And I look back and I had instinctual feelings, but I just dismissed them because I was primed in that sense of, well, what you're feeling isn't really real. It isn't really true. You don't really know what you're feeling. And so you see how all the red flags we're talking about are all linked. they all tie themselves to each other, and they all create this overall feeling, overall atmosphere of, I don't really trust my own truth, that my truth is out there, the guru knows, the master knows, and I have to follow them because my own truth is somehow fooling me. It's my ego. And you have to be really careful of that. And particularly when it comes to sexual abuse, and there's so much of it out there in the spiritual community, as spiritual masters, gurus, predators, you're ending up having sex with their students. And some of it's violent rape, some of it's coercion, some of it's kind of a whole mixture of non-consensual, consensual, power imbalances. There's a whole spectrum of really bad stuff. And it comes from this same principle, that even though you don't feel attracted to me, even though you don't want to have sex with me, like the part of you that doesn't want to have sex with me, that's your ego, that's your fears. And I'm going to put my magical lingam in your sacred yoni, and we're going to deal with all your sexual abuse history and all your problems with men by you basically letting me have sex with you. And if you have a problem with that, then we're going to work through that problem by actually having sex with me. And it is such a playbook thing that you think, oh, that's ridiculous. But if you're in that space, that guru has primed you, groomed you, and he doesn't do that on the first seminar you go to. This will be after a long succession of things. And you get presented with that. Any resistance you have to his advances is your ego. It's your problem. It's your issue. And the only way to get out of the issue is, surprise, surprise, have sex with that person. And it's just so messed up. But they're out there. That's exactly what they'll do. So, there's, as you can see, when I look at these red flags, there is a pattern here. And the pattern is this basic thing of someone being a narcissist, an abuser, and using spiritual language, spiritual principles to open that door up, to kind of bring you in, to make you feel special. And look, during that whole process, you may have some amazing experiences. You may do a meditation retreat, you may do all sorts of things. And you think, wow, that's really had an effect on me. Plant medicine's one of these things. We can go on ayahuasca for a weekend and have some really intense experience, and assume the person who's giving that medicine out has something, and they just may not at all. They could be extremely abusive and they could be a clown, cowboy, and con man all in one. So it's not to say that during this process you don't have positive experiences. That's the hook. They'll give you that and think you can have more of that. But to do that, you have to do these things. You have to make me money. You have to build my ego up. You have to kind of do what you're told. You have to surrender. You have to let go. All this kind of rubbish. And at the end of the day, you're being exploited. You are being taken advantage of. You are being abused. And it's a real indictment of where we've come to in terms of this thing. Because what's happening is, for all of us, including myself, we all have, or many of us have, a spiritual thirst, a spiritual need. We want to get closer to our divinity. We want to get closer to our essence, the love that's inside of us. And these spiritual predators are basically preying on that. They're preying on our insecurities and our childhood trauma and our need to feel important, but they're also preying on something good in us, something sincere in us, a good faith that I really want spiritual wisdom, and I do need to learn, and a good teacher can help me. And they take advantage of that, manipulate it, and exploit it. And that's what's so messed up about this, is they corrupt something really important in all of us, is our thirst and desire for spiritual insight, spiritual practice. And that's something that I feel is the worst thing why I'm making this video, is it's very easy then to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I know some people who've been through spiritual abuse and have almost become atheists, or they just think, stuff it, I want nothing to do with it. And they kind of let go of a whole thing based on that abuse, and I think that's a real shame. And it's been something I've had to rebuild little by little, because you can just end up very cynical. You can just end up feeling like, what the fuck, you know?